Today on SEBA On Demand, we speak with Nick Wilson from the Resiliency Project and talking about the stigma and fear that surround mental health for law enforcement. Nick, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very grateful to be here.
So law enforcement is at the forefront of a national conversation right now. There's so many things that people are talking about, but there's a lot of things that people are not talking about in terms of the complexities of this job. And you focus on those areas. Tell us a little about your area of focus.
My area of focus is on the mental health of our law enforcement officers. Our nonprofit, which is called the Resiliency Project, aims at providing peer support and provides funding for psychological services and or treatment and recovery services in an effort to provide an external platform for officers who are too afraid to go to their agencies and feel safe coming forward and asking for help before the officer is in crisis, and so that we can ultimately prevent suicide.
Suicide. I mean, it's just a chilling word. Any of us who have worked in this field have known somebody on our departments who have, come to that point where they felt that there was no other option. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to think about. How do you make that something that people become comfortable with?
Talking about mental health is not a comfortable topic. It is not historically has not been, it's almost been taboo because of the stigma that exists in the law enforcement community, which I believe cripples the mental health of our law enforcement officers. And so what we're trying to do is create a community of understanding amongst the law enforcement community where talking about mental health issues is okay, it's acceptable. And we really would like that conversation to start taking place at the academy level, because at the academy level they are indoctrinated to have that tough and stoic mindset, which is necessary, but sometimes we forget that mental health is absolutely pivotal and paramount to the overall success of their careers.
And you don't speak about this just coming from an outsider's perspective. I mean, I don't want to get too into your personal story, whatever that you're comfortable sharing with the audience, but I mean, this is a passion for you because of what you've experienced professionally in law enforcement and personally. Can you tell us where your passion comes from for this project?
I was a police officer for 13 years. It was a profession that I absolutely loved. I wanted to be a police officer since I was a kid. I was a cadet at 15 years old. And I was very, very blessed in that I was able to do all the things that I really wanted to do as a police officer. And I worked with really awesome people. But during the course of my career, and I medically retired due to injuries to my back and my arm, but over the course of several years and several surgeries that I had, I became chemically dependent through maladaptive coping on those medications. It got so bad that I was drinking to sleep, and I got into my car, went to get a new phone. I crashed my car, and I totaled my car after crashing into a fence. And it was single-handedly the most devastating thing that I have ever done, and I felt extremely ashamed of myself. And it was because of my inability to get help that it got so bad that I lost control of my life when I thought that I really had myself under control. And as a result, my wife left, and we have a son who's the light of my life. And after the DUI, I went into treatment, and I was there, and 45% of the people I was there with were law enforcement officers, and I was surprised. I was in shock that I wasn't alone, and I wanted to start a nonprofit that helped first responders so that they never had to experience the kind of pain and loss that I did after not doing the right thing and getting help.
So if there's someone in law enforcement that's watching right now that needs help, whether they're on the far end of the spectrum where it's really crisis, or they're just recognizing what you're saying more about wellness, what should they do?
I would say to the police officers out there that are affected by trauma, coming forward and asking for help is a sign of strength. It is not a sign of weakness. There's nothing wrong with feeling completely devastated and or affected by the unbelievably traumatic things that officers have to see on a daily basis. But we can't be victims ourselves. We have to have the capacity to understand that we're going through something and then to take action steps to change it. We can't afford to do nothing anymore. I'm not saying that we should be soft in terms of being an effective warrior on the street. I'm saying that being an effective warrior also means paying attention to your mental health and to have the kind of clarity needed in order to be able to get through a critical incident and make the right decisions under the most insurmountable stress. If you really want to do more to change the culture, then let's support our partners more. Let's not alienate those who are being affected by trauma. Let's start talking about it. I never thought that I would be talking about these things in my life. But after losing as much as I did, and after experiencing the loss I did, it's become my passion. Let's start changing the ball game in law enforcement, and let's start keeping our officers alive.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, for, giving the encouragement and really trying to shift that stigma, change the narrative, and encouraging people to talk about things that are hard to talk about.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Very grateful.